to a special NFL Draft Preview edition of What Caught My Eye, or WCME Sports. I am your host, the coach Nick Veschi. With me, as always, is the boy Stephen Veschi and the man Stephen Komlo.
Hello.
Today, we are lucky enough to be joined by consulting editor and NFL Draft analyst for Sportskeeda, Mr. Tony Pauline. Tony, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on our show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Tony, my first question revolves around the number one pick in the draft, which, of course, is held by the Tennessee Titans. Is Tennessee going to stay at that spot? I know they kind of opened that door of, hey, we might trade here. Do you think they'll stay in that spot? And if they do, who do you think they take?
Well, I reported on Sportskeeda. I was at 3 days of Shrine Bowl practice and then 3 days of Senior Bowl practice. And as a reporter from the Shrine practice, the word was that if the draft were held today, the Tennessee Titans would select Cam Ward with that first pick. Now, we still have 2.5 months before the draft takes place. You've got the combine, you got pro day workouts, you got free agency. So you got a lot of things that are going to happen before the draft kicks off the end of April. But, filming this today, February 7th, if the draft were held today, the word is that the Titans would take Cam Ward. Remember, they got a new head coach. They got a new general manager, Mike Morganzi, comes over from the Kansas City Chiefs. So, you got to get a quarterback in there. Will Levis, was hit or miss before they even selected him, and he's been a lot of miss. I think that right now they would take Cam Ward. Can I see them trade down? Well, yeah, if somebody offers them a huge package to move down, I could see that potentially happening.
Yeah, because I was thinking too, you're picking number one for a reason. You got a lot of holes all over your roster. And do you really want to throw a young kid in there in that fire? I know it seems to happen every year. Caleb Williams gets thrown into the fire, and we saw him kind of struggle to put up, some numbers and get kind of a foothold, and part of that is the Bears' undoing, right? So I was thinking maybe any chance they trade a little bit and try to get Travis Hunter, keep Will Levis for another year, and then maybe throw someone else in there because they'll probably be picking high next year. I don't know, but
yeah, you can't really base your draft plans this year on what you think may happen next year. And just because you select a quarterback at the top doesn't mean you have to insert him in the lineup all along. You got Patrick Mahomes playing, is probably the best quarterback in the NFL right now, and he sat his entire year because Andy Reid was intelligent enough to keep him on the sidelines. You had Drake May, who sat on the sidelines for, most of the first half of the season. So, you've got to be intelligent about it. I know football is a here and now game, and everybody wants their draft picks to be all pro type of players 3 weeks into their career, where in the past you waited 3 years. They did. The Titans did draft J.C. Latham last year. The 7th pick of the draft or something. So they do have some building blocks there on the offensive line. Don't know that he's going to get absolutely killed because they do have some players that have blocked for him.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the maybe you wait, sit a year, because that's something on our show that we've talked about in length with Anthony Richardson, the biggest example of that kid. Seems like with all the measurables in the world, he was thrown in too quickly and doesn't have it yet, the mental part of the game yet. And yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's something that we've talked about.
Well, Anthony Richardson was probably drafted too early because he had those great physical skills. He was not a very good quarterback at Florida. He was missed. You watched that, I believe the last game against Florida State, he had completed 33% of his passes. So there was some, especially at the quarterback position, if not solely at the quarterback position, since every team needs one and the law of supply and demand, quarterbacks, as we've seen in the NFL draft the past 15, 20 years, are always overdrafted. They're always taken much earlier than they should be, than people expect them to be. And, that leads to a lot of busts. Plus, the fact is, if you draft a quarterback, you better have the infrastructure in place to develop that player. There's a reason why the Andy Reids of the world, the Kyle Shanahans of the world, can basically turn their quarterbacks into all pros or really good players. Meanwhile, the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns can never get the quarterback equation correct.
Yeah, you commonly hear that? The Browns, your boy Jameis Winston isn't the answer up there. Spoiler
Oh,
alert.
give famous Jameis some credit. Come on. We love Jameis here.
You do, Komlo. You do. So you said Tennessee,
I got you a
they
shirt.
would be taking Cam Ward if it were today. Is he your number one QB on the board, or do you have Shadeur ranked ahead of him?
I have Cam Ward rated slightly higher than Shadeur Sanders. I like both of them. I think they're very close, but I always put an importance on the quarterback that's playing the best when he enters the draft. Look at Jaden Daniels last year. I mean, Jaden Daniels' game was on an upswing for a year and a half. And I said at the time he could be the best quarterback to come out of this draft. You look at Bo Nix, you look at Michael Penix. I think those guys, the quarterbacks, when they're entering the draft, if they're coming off a really good season and they've shown a lot of development in their game, those are the guys that I lean to. That is definitely Cam Ward, because he was head and shoulders a much better quarterback in 2024 than he was in 2023. You could tell it right from the first game he played against Florida. You're like, wow, this is not the same guy we saw at Washington State. Shadeur Sanders, I like him a lot. I think he's got a lot of skill. I think he's got a lot of ability. I think he tries to do too much as well. I mean, he didn't have a good offensive line there. He was getting pounded. To his credit, he would stay in the pocket or behind the line of scrimmage and try and make plays with his arm. And I think he just tried to improvise and held the ball a little bit too long. That's got to be coached out of him. One thing I wrote about at Sportskeeda, which people are starting to talk more about again during the Shrine Bowl, is the Deion factor. And that may turn some teams off, because Deion's an outspoken guy. He's got the bully pulpit as the head coach of Colorado. And there are some teams that are concerned that if things are not going well for Shadeur Sanders, his rookie year, you're going to be criticized day and night in the media by Deion Sanders, who draws a lot of attention. Maybe not the correct scheme, not the correct blocking scheme, not the correct coaching. And that has some teams concerned. So that's an interesting dynamic to watch moving forward.
Yeah, I was actually just about to ask you about Deion. Do you think he might pull an Archie Manning and say, if Shadeur is drafted by the Browns, say he's not playing in Cleveland, you need to trade him to the Giants, or kind of create that Eli, John Elway type of scenario?
He's already said he was going to do it, not only Shadeur Sanders, but Travis Hunter. And I don't think it's an empty threat by him. I think there are some teams, potentially the Browns, that Deion's going to say, don't even think about drafting my kid or Travis.
Yeah. Brought up Travis Hunter. I feel like on most big boards, he's kind of the consensus number one overall prospect. Obviously, like you said, with quarterback, that it kind of doesn't matter where you're ranked. It's you're normally going to get picked higher than that. But with him being such a great two-way player in college, what are you hearing about teams in terms of, are they going to plan to play him both ways in the NFL, whoever takes him? Do you think they'll put him on a snap count on offense, or just have him focus on one side of the ball, or just turn him loose like they do Shohei Ohtani in baseball?
Well, first thing is you're talking to one guy that doesn't have Travis Hunter as the number one rated player on his board. I've got Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter's been my number one rated player since the summer, and that's the way it's staying. I'm either really right or I'm really stubborn, or both. As far as Travis Hunter, I mean, it depends on who drafts him. He's got more downside at cornerback than he does at receiver. You make a mistake at cornerback on Sunday, it could be 6 points for the other team, 7 points for the other team. A lot depends on who drafts him. I have him more on my receiver board than cornerback board, because I think he's more polished as a pass catcher than he is defending passes. Yeah, he makes some nice plays, but he makes his plays based on athleticism at cornerback versus pure ball skills and fundamentals. But again, a lot depends on who drafts him. It's going to be interesting at the combine. I'm sure he's going to do both receiver drills and cornerback drills, and it's going to be interesting to see at the combine. Does he work out with the receivers and with the cornerbacks? Or do they have him work out with the receivers and then do cornerback drills after the receiver drills, or vice versa? That will be very telling as well.
Yeah, he's a conundrum. He's fun to watch, and
because I would have thought that I would have thought it'd be flipped, that he was more valuable at corner because of his ball skills and the turnover factor.
Well, I mean, cornerback is a more highly rated, or a more of a priority position come draft day, but I think that he needs a lot of work on his ball skills, and there's going to be less downside risk putting him at receiver. but that could change. We'll see.
Yeah. Another guy I had a question about is Tyler Warren. Another kind of really versatile guy. He's arguably a top 3 player in the country last year. At least when you look at Heisman Trophy credentials. But I've seen, and I think even on your board, he's not the number 1 tight end. There's a lot of other people who don't have him as number 1 tight end. Is that because of his lack of reps as a true tight end, whereas Colston Loveland played in a pro-style offense and played that tight end position traditionally more than what we saw Warren, or is it something else going on?
Something else. I mean, just because you're a great college football player doesn't necessarily mean you project as a great NFL pro. You look at the kid from Bowling Green, Fannin, who, his production was off the charts, but he's not really fast. And I think that's the thing with Warren. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he tests and how he times. Because now you want your tight ends to basically be able to get downfield, split the seam, create those mismatches in the secondary. I don't know that Warren can do it, or at least he doesn't do it as well as Colston Loveland. Probably doesn't do it as well as Elijah Arroyo of Miami, who really is an oversized receiver. But Warren does a lot of good things, well, that he's going to be probably a mid to bottom third of round 1 pick. If it was 25 years ago, and the tight end position was as highly prioritized as it is now, Tyler Warren's probably, or hands down, the first tight end selected. I just like Loveland's speed. I like his athleticism. I like his quickness. I like his ability to get down the field a little bit better, or significantly better than Warren's. That's really the bug that I have. Doesn't mean that Warren isn't a good player. It just means that I feel right now Loveland is slightly a better prospect.
How difficult is it to evaluate a prospect like Loveland, who had basically horrible quarterback play throughout the year?
Well, I watched these guys for 2 or 3 years. So, I got a ton of notes on Loveland the prior 2 years when J.J. McCarthy was his quarterback before he was injured. Because remember, he suffered a shoulder injury last year, which limited his time. So, I pride myself on, except for maybe the small school guys, but even the small school guys, I'll have 2 years of notes on them. I think you have to watch the body of work. That's why, go back to what I said about the quarterback play. I like quarterbacks who are at the top of their game, or basically their game is on the rise, a la Cam Ward, a la Jaden Daniels, as opposed to, say, Caleb Williams, who was a better player in 2022, or better quarterback in 2022 than he was in 2023. Obviously, you have to take that in consideration. Riley Leonard, really didn't have great targets at Notre Dame. You've got to factor that in, but you've got to watch a good portion of the entire body of work of these players, not just one season.
How many QBs do you think you're going to take in the first round? Because I know, right, kind of established Cam Ward and Shadeur are probably going to be picked higher, but who comes after them, if anyone, in that first round?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Jalen Milroe. I think Jalen Milroe will be a first-round pick. From a physical traits point of view, he's far and away the best quarterback in this draft. He's got the strongest arm. The guy carries the ball like a running back. He's a great leader. He's got high character. You're going to hear a lot about that with Jalen Milroe as we move towards the draft. The thing about Jalen Milroe is his passing seemed to go downhill after that Georgia game. That Georgia game was magnificent, and then after that, he seemed to lose confidence. He was winning games at the end of the season with his legs rather than his arm, but he still has shown that ability in the past. And what happens with, especially the quarterback position, teams will see a guy, or coaches will see a guy like Jalen Milroe, who's 6'3" and change, 225 pounds, an incredible athlete. He can throw the ball 80 yards down the field. He's got some decent film. And they said, we're going to coach the best out of this guy. So I think Jalen Milroe will be a first-round pick. I also think Quinn Ewers could slide into the back end of round 1. So you're going to see 3, maybe 4 quarterbacks selected in the first round.
Do you think Ewers slides there because the team trades up from the second round, or one of those teams at the back end of the draft think, oh, well, we got an aging quarterback, we'll take him?
Like the Detroit Lions. It could be either or. The Detroit could sit there and take him if they don't like any of the pass rushers that are on the board, or a team, say, if the Raiders can't trade up to the top of the draft to get one of the top 2 guys. They could maybe move up in the bottom half of round 1 and take a Quinn Ewers, who'd be perfect for that franchise, especially if Al Davis was still around.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Stevie had a question for you from some of these college kind of all-star showcase games.
Yeah, so we always hear about the Senior Bowl a lot. You mentioned the East-West Shrine Bowl. I'm wondering, outside of the Senior Bowl, at the Shrine Bowl or at the Hula Bowl, who helped themselves the most and someone that maybe the average fan doesn't know?
Nobody from the Hula Bowl really helped themselves. I mean, the Hula Bowl is a nice game, but I mean, it's late third round, late day 3 picks, I should say. As far as the Shrine Bowl was concerned, I think Kobe Bryant, the cornerback from Kansas, really helped himself. I mean, he was dominant for 2 days of practice, and he let everybody know it. He defended a lot of passes, and if you follow me on Twitter, I'd say he was a chatty fellow, but, he backed it up with his play. So I thought he really did. He helped himself a lot. I thought Holland Pierce, and I think Kobe Bryant is probably going to be the first player selected from the Shrine Bowl, although Eric Galko will say that Shadeur Sanders was the first player selected from the Shrine Bowl, since Shadeur Sanders was one day in street clothes, never threw a football. But I think it'd be Kobe Bryant is going to be a third-round pick. Holland Pierce, the big offensive tackle from Rutgers, I think improved his draft stock. A lot of people came away impressed by him, and he's a massive guy. J.J. Pegues, the defensive tackle, sometime running back from Mississippi, I think helped himself. He showed a lot of athleticism. There were some good small school interior offensive linemen. The kid from Gather, the kid from Lindenwood, full name escapes me now, Marcus Ware of Montana State, offensive guard. He also played relatively well.
You must have read my mind. My next question was going to be about small school linemen because I'm an offensive line junkie. That is what I love, and Stephen Komlo know this too well. Centers especially is my little forte. I love that. I love center play. That's what I was. I take pride in watching great centers do their work because it is so much different than every other offensive line position, with the fact that you have to snap the ball first and then block. But this draft, I feel like interior line wise doesn't have that high end talent. Like normally, there's a couple guards or centers that are in the late first round or in that discussion, and I feel like this draft I've seen projections with pretty much just tackles going and a bunch of different tackles that could be in the first round. Who do you think will be the first lineman taken, regardless of position? And then who do you think are some interior linemen for us to look out for?
Well, first thing is the center class in this year's draft sucks. So, forget about it. Your top center is probably going to be a guard that is projected to play center on Sunday. And then, the fact is how many of these college tackles are going to project to guard? I mean, is Kelvin Banks left tackle in the NFL, or is he a guard? Josh Connerly of Oregon, guy I love. He's one of my top guards on the board. There's
some Wyatt Milam too. Wyatt Milam.
Milam, you mean, of West Virginia?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, everybody projected him as a potential first-round left tackle. I never had him like that, but he went to the Senior Bowl, and he was terrific at guard. So now he's projected to guard. The other thing is, you got to watch these guys' arm length, because some of these guys who come in with under 34-inch arms are going to be pushed inside the guard. That's what people are saying about Will Campbell of LSU. I will believe it when I see it, that his arms are not even 33 inches. They aren't 33 inches, 33 and a half inches. Will Campbell of LSU will go from potentially the first tackle selected in the draft to a guard. And, his draft stock is going to fall a bit. I think Will Campbell will be the first tackle selected in the draft. At the top of his game, he is an athletic guy who can be dominant, but he's also very soft at times. He doesn't play like with a nasty attitude, and that's going to be a question that he's constantly asked at the combine during combine interviews. I think if Josh Simmons of Ohio State had not gotten injured during that Oregon game, very good chance he would have been the first offensive tackle selected. Very good chance he would have been a top 10, top 8 pick. I mean, his game was improving. San Diego State transfer. Who was a terrific athletic left tackle, went down with the knee injury against Oregon, so now he's not as developed as he would have been had he played the whole season and followed Ohio State through the national championships, and he's coming off an injury. So those are two sort of red flags. It's Marcus Bowe, comes into the Senior Bowl, 6'4", 309 pounds. Is he a tackle from the kid from Purdue, or is he a guard? Savanea of Arizona State, 6'4" and change. I like him at tackle, but some teams, going to push him into guard. So a lot of these college tackles or people you see projected as tackles could eventually end up at guard on Sunday.
I know Stevie had another interior lineman question about a small school guy from Western Michigan.
Yes, this is actually one of my best friend's cousin, so I have to ask the question. Addison West, consensus All-American from Western Michigan. I believe he's 6th or 7th round projection or undrafted free agent. And I'm wondering, is it the measurables? Because PFF, his scouting grade was one of the best they've had. He was actually the best interior lineman from the year according to PFF, especially pass blocking wise. So I'm wondering if it's just his measurables that pushes him down.
Yeah, well, what happens is with a lot of these guys, Addison West came, and I'm looking at it right now, Addison West came into the season graded as a street free agent, which basically means a guy from West Virginia who comes in as a street free agent, maybe he gets a mini camp tryout. I don't know that he's improved his game that much. You talked about the Hula Bowl. I know Jacob Gideon, I believe, of Western Michigan was at the Hula Bowl. I know Addison West was. It's a lot of different things. A lot of it will be based on the grade coming into the season, and West just got a very, very low grade, which I think he's not going to get drafted. He's probably going to be an undrafted free agent, maybe a mini camp invite.
Is that one of those things where it's kind of like a lot of things in life? Once you get a label, that label kind of follows you. So he came into the season with that label, and it wouldn't matter what he did on the field. It's just that's going to follow him.
No, I mean he also plays in the MAC, and the MAC is really a depressed conference now because everybody, with the NIL deal, everyone is stealing whatever decent talent there is from the MAC, and it's always been a little bit less compared to everyone else. While you're talking, what I'm actually going to try and do is pull up the preseason report on him for his measurables so I can get an exact idea of what scouts had coming into the season, because I gave him a very low grade and really didn't do too much on him. So hopefully that's what we
have
did.
to pick the most obscure person to ask you about.
Yeah, this might be something we might want to give you a heads up about. Sorry about that.
All right, no problem. Yeah, I got my in my database. I just have a grade on him that it wasn't even worth watching. Sorry for your friends.
That was the first thing I looked up when he told me he was a consensus All-American. I was like, no way, that's incredible. Especially at guard to be recognized from Western Michigan. But
it means absolutely nothing as far as NFL draft is concerned. It means
once I looked up his draft stock, I was like, oh.
Yeah, because you're a consensus All-American. You won all conference 4 years in a row. You won this. It means absolutely nothing.
Next, we'll ask about punters and fullbacks.
Yeah, right.
No,
who's the top placeholder coming into the draft?
No, it's the same.
Long snapper.
Long snappers, yes. Who's your favorite sleeper? I guess your guy that is going to be a late or somewhere day 3 pick that you're like, you know what, this guy has a real chance to come in and produce right away, and that he's only kind of valued there because of maybe some other circumstances.
Well, it's interesting when you said about this year's draft, because while there's not great quality at the top of this year's draft, there's going to be tremendous quantity on day 3 of the draft, because this is basically the final year for all those guys, all the players who got the extra COVID year or the extra year of eligibility due to COVID. So what's going to happen with this year's draft, you're probably going to have there's 255 picks in the draft, and teams will go towards the draft with guys with 300 to 325 players with draftable grades. The combine invites 325 players, and there's probably about 400 players that are deserving of combine invites. Bottom line is I go on and on and on. You're gonna have a lot of good value late in the late rounds. I mentioned Holland Pierce, Ahmad Hassanian of Boise State, the pass rusher. Great story. Lived in Egypt till he was 16. Then basically was kidnapped back here by his brother. Has turned out to be a really good player. I like Dylan Gabriel, quarterback from Oregon, who's probably isn't going to go until the 6th round area. Caleb Mullings of Michigan, who really he's a bigger downhill type of back, but he's very productive the 1 year that he was a starter. Nash Jones, offensive lineman, offensive guard out of Texas, wasn't on the scouting radar but before the season, but a big punch in the face type of lineman who would be a real good fit for a power gap scheme.
And a fantastic name
Yes.
for an interior offensive lineman. Nash Jones with the pancake block. It just
So
rolls
strong.
off the tongue.
So
Yes.
strong.
Yes. Boy, did you have any other questions?
I was going to ask about whose stock rose the most from the Senior Bowl, and maybe someone that we went look at, like I believe the Marshall edge rusher. He rose a lot, but someone.
Yeah, Mike Green was okay. I mean, everybody loved that play when he knocked Connolly back
it's a
off
highlight
the
reel.
ball. But if you talk to people, and I talked to people there, they were like, it was more Connolly was not set, and he did not come out of his set correctly, as opposed to it being a great play by Mike Green, which I'm sure he wanted to make, because the knock on Green is he's a 12th guy, is not going to be able to stand up against the run in the NFL. In my opinion, the top player, the guy that came out of the Senior Bowl with much higher draft grades or improved stock, was Olufemi Oladeju from UCLA. Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah.
The edge rusher. I mean, here's a guy who played middle linebacker as a junior, went back to school, entered the season with late round grades, had a real good year at UCLA, probably improved himself to the early part of day 3, and just could not be stopped for 3 days at Senior Bowl practice. He was unbelievable. Primarily stood up over tackle, on the edge. They lined him up inside, over center. He couldn't be stopped. He was just beating everybody. Destroyed Bo from Purdue, rep after rep. I mean, whenever he was up at the line, everybody was watching him to see if he was going to win again. I was able to spend some time with him. Actually went out to dinner with him one night. Just a fascinating guy and a smart guy as well. I thought David Walker, the pass rusher from Central Arkansas, had a terrific Senior Bowl, did what a Division II guy is supposed to do, won a lot of reps. The only thing is he's 6 foot 1/2 inch, 265 pounds. So, you're looking at a situational pass rusher who's going to have to play special teams. But he came into the Senior Bowl maybe as a late round pick, and now he's probably moved into the 5th round area, assuming he doesn't drop a dud at the combine.
Lastly, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about the New York Football Giants. Just coming from where our families are from, who you're working for, and all that stuff. I feel like New York's had a kind of a tumultuous last couple years, really up there. And I was just wondering, what direction do you think the organization goes, and what really is a make or break draft for Brian Dable and GM Joe Schoen?
Make or break year. I mean, for the record, I'm a New York Jets season ticket holder, even though I work with the Giants. I think that the Giants would
That's
like
great.
one of the quarterbacks. I think they would be very happy if the quarterback they got happened to be the name of Shadeur Sanders. But the fact is, I think they'll be happy with any of the top 4 players, either Cam Ward, Shadeur Sanders, Abdul Carter, or Travis Hunter. They're going to need an edge rusher, even though they traded for Brian Burns a couple of years ago. Ojulari's likely on his way out. The kid they drafted from Oregon has been hit and miss. Abdul Carter can be an absolute monster. I think they're in a good position. They would like a quarterback. They're going to have to get a quarterback somewhere because, it was pretty, excuse the expression, ballsy for Mara to keep Dable around another year. They're going to have to win, and they're going to need a quarterback. They would like that, the quarterback, but if they end up with Abdul Carter, I don't think they're going to be all that upset. For the record, I am looking at the numbers of Addison West here, 6'3", 301, estimated to be a 5'3", 40 guy, 31.5-inch arm. So that is all across the board. That's not really good. So 6'3", 301. You think he's a zone blocking lineman, 5'3", It tells you he doesn't have the athleticism to be a zone blocking lineman. 31.5-inch arms is, that's just short. That's not good. Sorry about that.
That's hilarious. Can we go back? I want to follow up on the Giants thing real quick.
Sure.
Do you think, with with such big top talent, I feel like the Giants needing so much from this draft, do you think it's likely that they address their quarterback issues in free agency? Since I think this year isn't Tommy DeVito going to be the only quarterback that they have under contract?
I mean, I'm sure they could. Kirk Cousins has made $1 gazillion playing mediocre football. And so Tommy DeVito sure as hell isn't the answer. I mean, the guy, he's a good star. He's a novelty, but, he's not somebody you want, underneath center week in and week out. I mean, obviously, you got to see who's there. You got to see who's available. You got to see if anybody gets cut. Is Derek Carr going to survive in New Orleans? Would the Giants consider bringing him in? Obviously, all options are open for the Giants at the signal caller position. I don't think that they're zoning in. We're going to get our guy in the draft. Because even if you get your guy in the draft, I mean, are you going to trust him behind that offensive line that has been really bad? And the left tackle who can be premier left tackle in the league has been injured much of the past 2 years. So even if you get your quarterback in the draft, you better be careful, because if you're putting all the weight on his shoulders, to carry that franchise as a rookie behind a bad offensive line with a mediocre running game, you could be setting yourself up for disaster.
Do you think they're haunted by getting rid of Saquon and they're looking running back?
I mean, are they haunted? No, I mean,
the internet has not been kind.
Of course,
it's the internet.
No, a big deal.
It's brutal.
As understandably it would be. I mean, the way Barkley's playing, but if they brought Barkley back behind the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line is head and shoulders above the New York Giants offensive line. So even if they signed him, I mean, to think that he would have had the same year for the Giants that he had with the Eagles is utterly foolish. Never mind the quarterback play. And they've got, they brought in Neighbors who's good, but, A.J. Brown and all those other. So, listen, it was a football decision. It doesn't look good on paper. But to say that he would have done as good, Barkley would have done as good with the Giants in 2024 as he did with the Eagles is utterly foolish. Listen, I remember 3 weeks into Barkley was 2018, right? I remember 3 weeks into the 2018 season, Giants fans were apoplectic because Sam Darnold was playing well, and every Giant fan here in the area said that the Giants made a huge mistake taking Saquon Barkley over Sam Darnold. See how that's turned out. Although Darnold did play well this year.
It's like you're at our family dinner table.
Yeah. if you could
fits right in. I'm just
that our mother said about the Giants this year, you would look at her differently.
Oh wow. Like I said, I'm a New York Jets season ticket holder. I haven't missed a home game in 43 years. I just go and laugh. I can't get wrapped.
There's a lot to unpack there, I'm sure.
So I did one question Steve and I were actually talking about before we came on. What part of the draft process do you value the most when you make evaluations of players?
Well, I do a lot of work over the summer to prepare myself. The draft for me is a 12-month process. What happens is now that after the Super Bowl is over, all these beat writers and all these people who cover the NFL, the season and teams are going to become draft experts. I mean, for me, the draft is a 12-month process. Once the 2025 draft is over, a week and a half later, I will be watching film for the 2026 draft. So I kind of like that process because when they're talking about Abdul Carter being potentially the top player in the draft, I say, hey, I've had that since August of last year. They're all important. I mean, I think getting your information before the season begins is important. The actual season itself is important. The Shrine Bowl practices and the Senior Bowl practices are important. The combine is not the end-all or be-all. You talk about the internet, some guy will run a 4.19 and the internet will explode. Big effing deal.
Kevin White. Taken by the Bears.
If Al Davis was around, sure, he would have been all over Xavier Worthy. They're all important. Really, the most important part of the draft process is what you'll never see. And those are the medicals and the interviews, because you can be a knockout player. You can have a great combine. if they do an MRI on you at the combine, or an individual, you come and visit a team, and something pops up on that MRI, that will kill your draft stock more than anything else. I remember working for Sports Illustrated back in like 2006, and there was when Northeastern had a football program, they had a tight end by the name of Brian Manville, who was going to be the first big-bodied, he was going to be Gronkowski. Gronkowski before anyone knew who Gronkowski was. And they did a simple stethoscope exam on him. They heard something strange. They gave him some extra tests. They found out that he had a heart condition, that if he took the wrong kind of concussion, the wrong kind of blow to his chest, he would have died. Had to retire on the spot. Montez Sweat. Remember the whole situation with Montez Sweat? Had some different tests come back on his heart that raised some concerns. He dropped. So, the medicals and the interviews are the most important parts of it. And that's something you'll never see. You may hear about it from the grapevine, because guys like me will put stuff out there. Remember Ja'Kai Polite, you may or may not remember him, the dominant pass rusher from Florida, who just interviewed horribly, and then complained about the questions they were asking him during his combine media session, which just kneecapped any sort of momentum he had going into the draft. And he turned out to be, he was taken by the Jets in the 3rd round. He was hot after his first year. He turned out to be nothing. So, it's all important. My favorite parts, I like it all. The most important parts aren't the 40. That is important. It isn't the film. That is important. The most important part are the medicals and the interviews.
I love it. Tony, thank you so much for taking the time to come out, talk to us, sit down. I know you're busy, especially this time of the year. Really the whole year. Like you said, it's a 12-month thing with the draft. But thank you so much for coming out. It's awesome to have you on the program. Awesome to meet you. Again, if you didn't know, that was Mr. Tony Pauline, consulting editor and NFL draft analyst for Sportskeeda. Again, Tony, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Tony. We really appreciate it, brother.
Thanks for having me.
So that's going to do it for us here on our special pre-NFL draft edition of What Caught My Eye. Don't forget to follow us on all of our socials. That's on X, on Instagram, and on Facebook at WCME_sports. Look for our weekly episodes to drop every Wednesday at noon on Spotify, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. And also be on the lookout for some more content-specific type of shows that will be coming your way shortly, like maybe some What Caught My Eye basketball, especially this time of year. But as always, for the boy, Stephen Veschi, the man, Stephen Komlo, NFL draft expert, Mr. Tony Pauline, I am the coach, Nick Veschi. Remember to be decent to each other. Have a good one. We'll see you next time. Take care, Guatemala.